So I was going to do a QA video. Somebody was asking, how do they know if they're creating their 3D models correctly? And really, you should be working more inside of a game engine than you do in Blender in some respects. Creating an actual game, working on environment art pieces, testing out level design, working with the engine itself. And so for this video, I figured we'll just do an Unleashed video instead and hang out here and talk about things a little bit and play around inside of a Flax Engine. So there's a lot of different engines out there to choose, whether it's Unity, Unreal, CryEngine, or whatever the case. But Flax Engine is kind of a nice little hidden secret. It's not real pretty when you first load it up, but you can quickly make it look just as good as anything else. And it's actually really clean. It's a nice little engine here. It still has some bugs and stuff that might need to get worked out, of course. It's pretty much ran by one guy developing it for the most part. I mean, he gets help from other people, but it's really fantastic, in my opinion. So we'll mess around inside of this and just talk about kind of random stuff here, do a little 3D modeling and play with some settings and stuff. So we're just going to do a new project. We'll do a basic scene, nothing too crazy. And we'll just call this one the Unleashed project for now. I'll probably delete it right after this video, but I'll just go ahead and create it. You can see it creates it like that, and then you just load it up. So it's kind of interesting how the launcher does that, but you can create more projects if you wanted to, or use sample projects. And let me flick it over here. See, it does have some little odd ends that don't quite work just right. So on two monitors, shifting it over like that, you just minimize it, re-maximize it. Might get some graphic glitches in here, and I think that has more to do with using an AMD graphics card than an NVIDIA one. But other than that, we can see here, it's very clean. It's very similar to like Unity or CryEngine in a lot of ways. And it's got some, similarities to Unreal as well. So it's kind of like a nice little mix of all three. And it's a really clean user interface, I think. I like this setup anyways. But all right, so let's get into this. The main scene here, it's a little harsh launching it up, right? So the main reason being is that the eye adaptation is not maybe, the best it can be set up. And there's little things you want to tweak or configure. And a lot of game engines can be like this anyways, where they're just slightly not tuned the way you want by default. You should be taking your time to, create the kind of art styles and stuff that you want to create anyways. But I want to show you guys this. So I'm going to turn the FPS counter on. One of the big gripes, and a lot of guys have been asking me for comment on the Threat Interactive videos, talking about Unreal Engine just being bad for performance and all that. Now, the truth is, Unreal Engine 5, you can turn off a ton of settings and you can make it perform better. It's still going to be one of the heavier, more demanding engines out there compared to some of the others, right? So it does have some performance drawbacks, obviously, but it's not as much as you would think it would be if you start tweaking it and configuring it. And especially if you have a lot of game development experience. But if you're kind of new to everything, Unity, Godot, Flax Engine, something, those would probably be your better places to start. Unreal's definitely on the more corporate kind of big development studio side of things. So just importing models over there, for example, can be kind of harsh. They just changed all that to the interchange system. And so it can be hard to get a model in that looks correct without knowing how to set it up to do that. So on the flip side of this, engines like this, super simple, right? And this one is actually pretty decent so far. I haven't had a whole lot of time in it, but overall, it's nice. So the main thing here is with the frame per second counter going now, you're going to see that I'm going to float around 165 more than likely while doing this video. And that's because I capped it at 165. Usually it caps at 60, but yeah, it's very performant. And so right off the bat, it's very similar to Unity in this sense. Like we have our content folder and we have like game settings right here. Double tap it. And you can see we have all of our settings here. So one of those happens to be like your global graphics settings, which are all right here. So if you want to change your defaults that are enabled when the game starts or whatever, like this is where to do it basically. And you'll see like, this is okay, but check this out. We can change the editor window as well. Graphics quality here. So we can use the project defaults, which is what we were just looking at, or you can just turn that off and we can start changing them, right? So we can use Ultra maybe. Just kick them all up real quick. If your system can handle it, of course. And then that's that. So it's gonna look a lot nicer now. Might take a little second to kind of update, and then boom, you're done. So it won't be so laggy. Now, this is where the fun begins. You really need to think about, you know, playing around in this engine more so than in like Blender. Because truthfully, if you're going to be an environment artist or working on props or whatever the case, working on an indie game projects, this is where you work most of the time. The dedicated content creation suites, right? The software that you're going to end up using, Max, Maya, Blender, or whatever. It's just to create models, rigs, animations, get them over here, and then do what you got to do. Substance Painter is still the best place to do texturing, so get Substance Painter as well. And then over here, you're going to actually put those things to use for your projects. If you're doing a top-down shooter or like a top-down game or a third-person action adventure or a first-person shooter, they're all going to have different requirements for the models that you're creating and how you present them and rig them and animate them and all kinds of other fun stuff. All of it can be very different. And so when you listen to game artists talk about creating game models, I mean, they might be doing like PS1 graphics, 2D graphics. There's all kinds of stuff they do, right? Same can be true for VFX. There's different shots and scenes. They need different requirements out of the 3D models. So when guys aren't sure if they're doing things correctly, usually when you're doing like portfolio pieces, it might be geared towards video games, but you need to decide, is it like a first person piece or a third person piece? Or is this just going to be a general 3D model to show that you understand 3D modeling? Because not everything revolves around games, right? So you really have to make a determination there. Now, honestly, if you're going for game jobs, you're going to want to show that you can create game models and use them in the game engine, and you understand shaders over here and how to work with things and make cool scenes or cut scenes and things like that. It's really not that hard to get into all of it. But if you don't practice that stuff, you know, you're going to have a harder time. You know, build an environment. You don't necessarily need to program every aspect of a game, but, you know, drop in a third-person controller or a first-person controller. There's templates, I think, that have those for this game engine as well. And then use those. Don't worry about making them as custom or as crazy awesome as you need to, but build a level or a map that a character could run through or a player could run through and actually navigate through. There won't be no game. You don't necessarily have to develop the gameplay mechanics and stuff right off the bat or anything like that, right? That's usually more along the level designer job, not necessarily environment artist or prop artist or something like that. So, but you can start doing that if you want. You can start playing around with the idea of lighting things as well, and start learning it all, right? So this one, by default, under visuals, it's using the Sky system, and it's using the default setup here. So like game settings, graphics. It's using these kind of post-process effects by default. That's why there's no post-process volume in the scene, because it's all kind of configured this way, right? Right, so what does that mean? We can create a post-process volume, visuals, post-effects volume, drop it in here. It's a big square right now. Let me go ahead and hit 3, scale it down. Make sure we scale it the right way. And it's 1, 2, and 3 to move and rotate and scale. But yeah, let's just do that for now. And so one of the first things is like, it's kind of weird the way it's dark and bright and all that. So let's go ahead and take this and change it. And we'll minimize a lot of these actually for right now, so they're not so everywhere. We're going to be using eye adaptation here in a sec. So mode, let's use an automatic histogram. Okay, that's the default. If we were to change this to something else like none, you'll see it gets a little yellow line. That just means it's been modified. And if we right click, we can reset it to the default value, basically. So it's kind of good like that. You can do that. But we set it to none, and you notice it doesn't do anything until you're in the volume. Then it does something. Now, I think I have a bug on my end right now, but usually these volumes like this, they will blend, right? So you'll see here at the top, or it might be because I've scaled this in this manner as well, where we need to actually use the size controls perhaps, right? So it could be that as well. That controls the blending perhaps. We'll find out here in a second. But yeah, usually they blend in and out, and there's a blend weight to it, and there's a blend radius. So usually this should be in centimeters. So if we did 200, it should blend in slowly, not pop in and out. So I think I just have a little bit of an issue with that right now. And there's also like a blend weight on how much it's going to take effect, so you can actually blend two together. Sometimes that'll work out too, but in our case it's not. So here we go. Priority is at 0. We can set it to 1 perhaps. Okay, so there's a priority amount. So if we had multiple of these kind of stacked next to each other, we can have this one take priority. So when we're in between two of them, we'll actually get the second one here. So this one should be taking effect now. Get a hold of it real quick. In that adaptation mode, if we were to set it back to, say, automatic, you see it takes effect now. We can play around with like min brightness and max brightness here as well and get a different result. And it should be taking over because it has a higher priority. For whatever reason, it feels like it is kind of hung up and it's not doing that, but okay. Okay, now they're blending too. So for whatever reason, maybe you need two of them to start blending, or you got to go between two of them. Not the global one, perhaps. See, the global one just pops in and out. But over here, it blends in. Okay. The way this normally works and why it might not be working out so well is the first one. A lot of times it's not set as bounded. Okay. And it doesn't necessarily have a priority. You might have it at 0 or even a negative number if it allows it. I don't know if this engine does, but yeah, you might put it at 0 is probably better, I bet, but you put it at 0. So you can see it takes priority everywhere now. It's not bounded. Whereas if we were to go back into the other space, it kind of takes over, right? But once again, we got a little blend in and out issue apparently. So yeah, it's not working quite right, I guess. Let's move on from that. But that's the main idea of these volumes. Usually when you're creating a level, you can have these different volumes set up in different rooms so you can get dramatically different kind of like post-processing in different areas and kind of do a guided tour through your environments or map or whatever. So we'll just mess with the global one for now, since it seems to be acting up. But adaptation, we can set this to like automatic. You can see it gets a little bit slow doing that, but we can control D these, move them around. Sometimes these are good just to help check shadows and stuff. Maybe you can use some other kind of mesh or bigger cubes or something like that. But I'm just looking for like ambient occlusion or a little bit of dark space in here that we can utilize. So when we go into the dark space, you see it gets much brighter. This is what I was wanting to see right here. So the mode is set to automatic histogram. It is using min and max brightness of 0.3 and 15, but we can change those values around. I found that 0.5 and maybe like 1 works out fairly well in this engine, but sometimes you might want to go a little bit higher as well. So 0.8 is your min. That's just like, if you kept going, it would make it darker basically, you see? But we could do like 0.8 maybe. And then the max brightness would be the one out here. If we actually take that value lower, it becomes brighter. If we take it a little bit higher, it becomes darker. And so that's what's kind of, I think, throwing the scene here from the default anyways setup, is that you got to play around with eye adaptation and automatic histogram a little bit and set up a post-process volume, which we can throw up here. We also have a skylight, which if we delete, you can see we have no kind of lighting like this. The skylight's good for this kind of thing. You can tweak it in brightness as well if you need to. So now you can see like how much brighter it gets and darker. Directional light's good, but environment probe, this is going to be for reflections. If we're going to use global illumination, we don't really need necessarily that environment probe like that. The sky itself, we're not going to utilize here in a second. So in the skylight, we're not going to need necessarily either. So this is what I wanted to go over: post FX volume, directional light. So these two are needed for now, but we need something else. We need a skybox. So this is like the cheapest way of rendering a sky is using a skybox. We can just drop that in here. It'll show up wherever it wants to go. And you can place them all in that visual section. Now the skybox, there's a couple different ways you can use it. You could use a cube texture, a panoramic texture, or a custom material. And so in our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import an HDRI, and I'm going to take one from Polyhaven. This is from their Clear Skies collection. So you can kind of pick whichever one you want from Polyhaven, download it as either HDR or EXR. It doesn't really matter. This engine actually will import both. A lot of times engines struggle with the different file formats. This one does fine. We'll do this Sunflower Pure Sky 8K. and we'll open it up. And we're just going to leave it as default settings here. We might have to tweak it a little bit later on, but it's not a big deal. It's going to take a second for it to import. You can see it's an 8K image. It's HDR. It's going to take a little second here, nonetheless. But it will come in, and we'll set that into panoramic texture. That's basically what that is. It's panorama, right? HDRI. And we set it in, and now it's too dark. So I found a lot of times they come in either too dark or too bright, and you got to tweak the values here. Basically, you can see 3 is too much, 2 might be okay. And so usually somewhere between like 1 and 3 tends to work out well. It's really up to you, I guess, on what you set, but it can blow out very easily as well. So you got to be careful you don't blow out the sky itself, or make it too dark anyways. Right, and so, yep, there we go. So we got this really dark patch now. It's nice and lit over here. The direction light, this one, you can also tweak this a little bit, maybe. Now, this is similar to Unreal Engine, I believe. It's not lumens, but I believe 10 is like the setting of 100 or something in lumens, something like that. And so it could be a little bit brighter, maybe, just at like 10, 12, perhaps. But if you go too bright, it just becomes a little bit too much. So you'll have to tweak that value. I mean, it still looks pretty okay with certain like exposure levels and stuff when you set it really low, but it's not necessarily realistic, right? So we don't have the skylight no more, so we need to have this starting to look, well, lit. There's nothing lighting it, right? So we could use a skylight perhaps, but we can also, we could turn on the global illumination with the volume. So post effects volume controls a lot of this. So eye adaptation, let's do global illumination mode, set it to DDGI. It's going to automatically set it up. Okay, and there you go. So you can see that's working. I actually think the intensity is too much here. It's probably correct if I had to take a guess, but I think it's too much. So I'm just going to crank it down and, you know, kind of artistically direct it here, maybe like 0.5s or 0.4s. And we can tweak the values of the lights and until we get a nice look going anyways, something that we like. We can definitely do this number here like this. So trying to balance it out. And then we can always go back and we can do different things. Like we can, with the volume anyways, like we actually can do, like we can play with ambient occlusion or box volumes or whatever else. Tone mapping, bloom, all this fun stuff's in here. So like the bloom intensity is not high enough. You can just crank it up if you wanted. That's on you. But generally I think it's okay-ish. You can see it's not blooming much though. At least it doesn't. Yes, there it's bloom. There we go. So like bloom's annoying to me. I like to keep it real low usually. Anyways, the eye adaptation's still in here. So, you know, that min brightness, you know, you could tweak these values still if you wanted to and try cranking them around to get a different look. See what I'm saying? And so there we go. Now it's a lot prettier looking, right? But we still have room to go here. Let's turn the grid off. Let's do show grid off. Boom. And maybe that skybox we make just a tiny bit brighter. This one's pretty dark for some reason. So let's do, yeah, 2.3 maybe. We could tweak this all day until we get exactly the look we're going for. And we could spend a minute doing that even. So surprisingly, this is where what I'm trying to get to here is we got the skybox, post effects volume, and we're tweaking the settings now. This is how much the settings play a role, and the post-processing plays a role in your end result here, in a game engine anyways. So you can see, and it's big in VFX too, right? They do a lot of compositing work. But anti-aliasing, right now, by default, set to fast approximate, right? So FXAA. There's also temporal, and there's subpixel in here as well. So it does have AA on right now, but if we wanted to switch between these, we could do that. Okay, I'm just going to leave it on FXAA though. You can actually change them in different areas if you had to. Screen space reflections, intensity, trace volumes, all this is in here, so you can work on those if you need to. Depth of field, blur, like camera artifacts, like we have vignetting. We can just change the vignetting amount here. Maybe add a little bit. Maybe we want to have like a little grain amount to the picture, like Left 4 Dead or something. You know, any of the games that use grain. It's pretty much what they're doing. They have a little tiny grain on everything. Change grain speed and all kinds of other fun stuff. You can do lens flares. Right now my intensity is at 0.5, but let's just change it to like 3 and see if it does show up anywhere. Yeah, I think my settings might be off a little bit because that lens flare just does not pop in the way I would expect it to. And I think that's due to the directional light being so low or something like that anyways. The directional light you can rotate. You can see right now we're using, we should be able to change it from a global to a local rotation. Oh, it's already at local, I guess. But the main idea is that we can rotate it around as needed. And we can kind of put that arrow towards the light source, which is usually the sun in the HDRI. And so we'll have more accurate looking shadows that line up with the lighting of the world. Just want to make sure I'm going the right way with that. Which one am I supposed to be rotating on? This gizmo sometimes is a little confusing. Pretty sure it's the red one. Yeah, there you go. So the only thing I don't like about this engine off the bat is that gizmo. But other than that, it's fine. So yeah, you can see that makes way more sense now to do that, right? So the Skybox actually looks a little bit too bright now. Maybe 2.1. Looks a little bit washed out. I'm pretty sure we can adjust it somehow if we were to set up a material, but I haven't got into that just yet. So we can see though, it's okay though. It's not too bad. We got some nice shadows. We got some indirect lighting now, which is great. We've changed our graphics quality up. And so this is the thing. We're still cruising right now at like 166 frames per second or higher. Right now, we're pretty close to having a setup similar to like Hunt Showdown. And not too far off from it anyways, like the basic idea of the lighting anyways. I'm pretty sure that game uses a skybox still because the Unreal Engine default scene, it uses volumetric clouds. And usually CryEngine games use volumetric clouds as well. While they look great, a lot of times they're like a 30 frames per second hit almost, or something like that. That's probably one of the most unoptimal things in a lot of game engines, the cloud systems. But you can see here, you know, just a simple image as a texture, skybox, right? No problems. And, you know, if we were to use like TA or something else, we might lose a little bit of frames per second, but it's not really a big issue, right? Are we using nanite or anything like that? No. I don't think nanite's even the biggest performance problem you have in Unreal Engine, right? It's something else that's kind of like underneath all of that, in my opinion. It really causes an issue because this screen space is very small right now, right? Like, would this work the same in the game screen if I just press play? For this engine in particular, you got to do a little script, I believe, to show the frames per second. But right now, it's probably performing about the same. But the game window, you can right click, and you'll see here we can do viewport size. We can actually change it to something else. So if we want to just do 1440, we can do that, and it's forcing it right now. So we can actually test the frames per second at that. And see, you know, like what it's doing at 1440 or 4K or whatever the case. And I know that 1440, when I checked a similar setup to this, I was still doing 160. Like, it's not even a big deal. It was dropping below 165 a little bit. The 4K images were a little bit further down, 130-ish, 140-ish. But the if I did like split screen, two windows running at the same time, it was like 60 frames per second on each one of them. So about twice the overhead, right? I don't get this kind of performance out of any other game engine that I tried, except for like Unity's kind of good, but a lot of them have become bloated. And so I'm really excited about Flax Engine. I just thought, you know, I kind of come in here and play with it for a little bit, kind of show you guys like, hey, there's still like hope for the future of indie games and stuff. Like, this is a, you know, if you make money off of this game, you're going to end up paying for it if you're trying to make an indie title or something. But I mean, honestly, it's in development. It's been in development for a while, and it's really sleek. I like it. If you're focusing on like PC in particular, I think it's really good for it. But it's going to start working, or it should already be working, I think, technically, they have like the Android build setup and Linux and all the other fun build stuff in here. So it's one of those things, which yeah, I mean, this is a cool. Oh, that's build settings. Where's the yeah, you can see like we could do a Linux platform. It's all right here, anyways. The Mac stuff. So it's not for everything just yet, but it's Android, Mac, iOS, Linux, UWP, and Windows, right? So kind of cool. I like it. So how do you know if you're creating correct game models, guys? It works like any other game engine. You can snap to grid. You can do it in tens. You can do it in hundreds centimeters. When you're creating models in Blender, use grid snapping. And I think they mess grid snapping up personally. I like the way it used to be. But if we're going to make walls or modular pieces or whatever, like we can start with very basic kind of like block out pieces first. Just holding control, moving around and all that fun stuff. This is how you start to get into game art, guys, is just building stuff for game engines. Not even necessarily doing the high to low poly baking right away. You got to know if something's going to kind of work first. And so when you do something like this, and we'll just call it like wall A for now, or we'll say wall, I don't know, what is this, 4 meter? Usually I don't like doing things like that. I'd say it's like wall industrial something. Brick, and then I would just say large or 4 meters. I don't like using the values because sometimes it's a little bit misleading, but it'd be like longest edge for myself. I would use that. Now, so anyways, we go through this, we do all this number, shade it auto smooth. Maybe you weight the normals, keep sharps, all that fun stuff, right? And then you triangulate it, keep normals. This is a low poly setup basically. So you can imagine this being unwrapped and everything. And then we export FBX file. I'm just going to put it on the desktop here real quick, but only the selected object, give it the name it needs, boom. That's the setup right there, right? Click on the right Flax icon and we'll get back over here. So we can just now do import file. It's an FBX export. It's in the scene center. Should have the correct origin point. And I'm just going to use the default values here for now, but just going to import. So we can drag and drop it in. You see? And now we can start seeing that it's a little bit strange looking, actually, right off the bat here. Okay, so yeah, but basically we can move it around and do this number all day long. If we want to set it up as a wall and start working out an environment. There we go. The problem we're having with this one mostly, I think, I'm going to leave a little gap here. I'm going to hit Control D and then just rotate it. You'll see that rotation, I can grab the thing. It doesn't snap, but if you hold Control, it does snap, kind of like Blender. But you can just turn on angle snap up here too and change it. This is the kind of stuff that people always wanted from Blender. They wanted this kind of control over things. And so, but you can see we can just keep running these out. Now, the biggest issue is you see it has like some weird shading and stuff going on. It could be a texture on it causing that, but it might be something else. And I think I've seen it do it earlier. The global illumination, sometimes you got to build, come up here to tools. We got to build all mesh SDF and it should recalculate those. And so, and you can see it does have a texture on it, in fact, as well. So it's even like, it almost looks like I got okay UV mapping out of it by accident. I didn't UV map it, but I think you get the idea. So yeah, we could start building a whole environment here and tweaking our settings until everything's working kind of the way we want. You can see like we do have some like light leaking and stuff. There's always ways of fixing things like this possibly. It could just be that it's, it's not quite positioned the way it should be. Like maybe you don't want to have them intersecting like this. So if we had moved it on X out here, maybe that light leaking stops because of that. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? Maybe there's some settings we can change. There's all kinds of little granular things we got to figure out when we go into level design. It's like once you do it a few times over, like you start learning these things, it becomes easier and easier. But you can see like it could be an actual issue with the props or the assets. How do you know? Like, you don't. That's the thing. You don't ever know. Things can go wrong at any given time on any given project. And so what you do is you figure it out as you go. There's a saying that some people were using for a while where they would say, just, build first, optimize later. Okay. That's kind of a good idea, except in reality, it doesn't work out that well. You should try to build what you can build fast. So like blockouts are fast, get them going, set up the naming convention, the big idea of the piece that you want to create. Then you could do the high to low later, or the trim sheets on it, or whatever else you want to do to it. You could do a whole level design if you really wanted to with these basic pieces. And oftentimes, if you're going to create an environment art, you're going to create these basic pieces first, hand them off to a level designer. They're going to start working with them. And then they're going to say, maybe we need some more different parts and pieces a lot of times. So that can happen. All right. So this is just, this is all I'm getting at here. Like, we go through this process and we start working it. And I have a feeling this has more to do with the shadow itself from the directional light. I have a feeling there's some settings in here we can tweak because there's a lot of them, such as shadow cascades and all kinds of other fun stuff. So it could be like depth bias, for example. Tweaking this number here could have a pivotal role on that. You can see depth bias is usually a big one. Whoops, I keep hitting Z by accident, apparently. We don't want to have it all do this, but we do want to have that little hole closed up, not doing that, right? So, but then there can be some other ones we change, like normal offsets and stuff like that. I don't want to get too involved with all that because I'll start messing up the scene, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, depth bias can be a good one. Distance sometimes, fade distance, all these fun things in here to play around with, like Cascade 1 or Cascade 2. Oh, excuse me. What am I doing there? I'm just tweaking that number there way too much. Sometimes these values can play a role as well. What cascade are we at? Okay, I guess it maybe isn't a cascade then. I thought it might have been a cascade issue. Nope, it is not. All right. You could try rebuilding the SDF as well, or increasing the. That's kind of getting it more involved, where we increase like the resolution of the SDF and decrease it for global illumination and all that. There's a possibility you could do that. So in game settings, graphics, global surface atlas, this is for GI, right? If we use like a 4096 instead and save it, sometimes it works out better, but it could cause flickering possibly if it's too low or if it's too high. There's like usually a balance with the resolution. 2048 works well. 4096 seems to work well as well. But yeah, definitely that wasn't the issue. So we'll have to mess with that one later. Maybe we actually have to create a corner unit so it doesn't do that. See where I'm going? We don't know. And so you can build fast and test as you go is the best thing you can do, right? When you're doing a prop, build the like mid poly, like it's almost going to work in a game engine type model where it has the resolution you need for everything. Looks nice and clean and all that. And then either work it down lower to make a lower poly, more optimized model, or use that to build the high poly as well. And high poly should only be like minor surface changes a lot of times, or floaters or whatever else you might end up doing. But a lot of times you can just kind of do that mid poly first. I always call it a mid poly because it's usually like heavier bevels on it. It's made so that it looks good in a game engine. And then you can always reduce it or create LOD models off of it and stuff like that. So level of detail models. And that's all I'm trying to point out here. Cause like we can do walls and floors and ceilings and all that fun stuff. But if we keep, playing around with just modeling, not that one. Let's do, it just depends on what you're working on. There's all kinds of things you can create. And I was looking for, let's see. I don't know if I kept it. I think I deleted it by accident. Platform might have something interesting in it. Oh yeah, I kept it. Okay, this is it. So like stuff like this, we're not going to necessarily, it may or may not work out correctly. First of all, I didn't line this up on the grid properly, I don't think. Oh, I did. Okay. So check this out. It's not in the scene center. If we turn X and Y on, we can see it's off center. I'm going to export this We'll just call it platform FBX, selected object only. So all of that's going. Go back to Flax and we import. Platform. We'll just use the defaults again. You can see it comes in, but you see how it's like off center already? Okay, so it's one of the weird things about game engines, like the scene center becomes the origin point. I don't really care for that. I'd rather when I export it, I can pick like an active element or use an empty or something, but that's just how they do. So what we need to do is center this up or align it in a way that we know that we can use it perhaps. So like this piece here, I'm going to use active element, hit G, hold control. We're using grid snapping still, right? Or we should be. It should be close to dead center in here, right? Oh, it's not using grid snapping, apparently. Oh, okay, sorry. When you use this, you use active here. You don't use active here, so this can be median still. I don't know. It's just one of those weird things that it's like two actives you could use possibly, but only one works one way and one works the other way, right? So, but now we got it kind of more centered up like that. So now we can just re-export it, platform FBX. Go back to Flax, not that. Keep hitting the wrong icon there. And so, yeah, you can see this one over here now. You can just re-import. All right, should come in rather fast because it's relatively low poly still. But I think you get the idea here. So if we're making some kind of scene in a building or something maybe, and this was supposed to be something like a highway, but we can duplicate, move things up. It's still snapping to the grid. This is now on the grid as well. So if we had multiples of these, okay, so your blockouts don't really have to be a whole lot more than this. Like this is the key of like modular working. You build something that works on the grid and then you test it to make sure that it's going to line up to your other modular pieces the way you want them to. Because right now, I think this is longer than the walls are. So for every one of these, we have, oh, maybe we have 2 walls for every one of those. So that's actually pretty good. It's not too bad. Unless I'm looking at this wrong. They should be lined up as well. So it might be a little bit too long. That happens sometimes. You have to just fix it later, perhaps. Because you see these want to intersect with each other. So one of these little platform pieces, we would have to call off of the model on one end. Because otherwise it's going to intersect. But for the most part, they do work with each other. So you're playing this game of like line up the tiles, basically. And that's really what it comes down to. Like modular workflows are very fast and efficient. Don't ask me about this little noise here yet for this global illumination. I'm going to figure all this out later on with this engine, I promise. So that way we can actually have some fun with it. I think it's capable in a lot of ways, but I'm sure there's a lot of little tweaks for it. But yeah, anyways. So yeah, we could have a catwalk up there like that. Maybe we just go ahead and build the SDFs again. It's going to take a second, kill the frame rate, but there you go. Right? And so, hey, guys, do you ever know for sure? Maybe not, but this is the best way to check it. You do like your rough game model, like a placement model, maybe a blockout, a detailed blockout, or even like a almost finished mid poly, low poly model, and just not quite optimized yet. Test it in engine, bring it in, start working in this, and just using, Blender, just using it to create the assets that you need, and then substance to texture and bring it all over to the game engine as quick as you can. That's the best way of working. I'm telling you right now. Just, do what you can do fast and then slow down and, take your time when you're doing the polish, right? You should be doing something like a rough and then doing a final asset. So like doing like a concept or rough mesh first, possibly. Then you're doing a more finalized asset. And that's going to even look rough when you work on it. You're going to probably come back over it again later on and do a, what I would call like an art pass or a polish pass on every asset and kind of make them all look good with each other. But there's different ways of working, of course. This is not like, just because I say this does not mean it's like the only way of doing things. But you can definitely, you You can have a lot of fun with this. And you see now we got all this kind of like mixed up in here. Let's see if I can't just select these. I don't need that one. I kind of want that little section there. So I'm going to use the cursor selector to unselect all these. Like that. So this will come out. See where we kind of run into issues with this sometimes. You can, with machine tools, you can grab something like this, right? You can hit Control G and it will group it with machine tools if you have it on. And you can set it to have the location at the active element or wherever you would like, you know. In our case, I think I would rather, I kind of want to put an origin point right here. Maybe on this vertex even. Somewhere back here would be a good place for the origin point, I feel like. Maybe in a corner as well, but you see the bevel kind of throws me off here because we want to have maybe the origin point right in the middle of those two before the bevel. So let's just put it at the seam. Let's put it at this edge with that origin point. And we can take all of this, make this the active element, double tap it, shift double tap, Control G it, set it to the location as active. That's going to put our group there. And the rotation can be, yeah, world's fun. So basically what we've done is when we select this and if we shift double tap somewhere, we select the group. And all we got to do is, as long as this is active and we have grid snapping on for the active element, we can just go ahead and place this also at the scene center. Probably align it the way you want it to be aligned. You might have to apply rotations and fun stuff like that as well. You can / to isolate, shade auto smooth. Maybe get rid of custom normal data if you have it, right? Sometimes you got to select something that has it, alt click those, and it should get rid of all of them. Like this one, alt click, boom. Okay, it didn't get rid of all of them apparently. There might be some modifiers here, smooth biangles and triangulates. Yeah, I don't really like these modifier setups. So what I'm going to do is delete them real quick. I'm going to shade auto smooth. Okay, we're going to do a weighted normal modifier, unpin, weighted goes after. Okay, now we'll do the triangulate. Keep normals. Press A, Control L, copy modifiers, boom. Okay, so if anything has custom normals, we can remove it, but this should take over now. And if we don't have anything else in this scene, we could just select it all with A and export FBX, selected objects. If something's hidden or you're isolated, like you can't see the other things, they won't export usually, generally speaking, but we'll say this is going to be platform, I don't know, stairs or something. And selected objects. These aren't scaled correctly at all, I don't think, but and we'll do a new folder. We'll just say static mesh for now, but you can name the folder whatever you want. Call it your industrial pack or industrial modular pieces, your level name pieces, whatever, you know. Let's import that. Yeah, where's my stairs? There we go, platform stairs. It's using type model by default, just in case you missed that, is what it's doing. It does not have any collisions right now. As a matter of fact, collisions are here a little bit more difficult to deal with actually than Unreal Engine. But we'd set them up and import them as well, basically. I don't think there's an auto generation. If there is, I haven't looked into it yet, so I don't really know, but that's the main idea anyway. So it's supposed to be like some kind of little platform that was on the end of something where like little ships or something could cruise up to it, maybe. That was the idea of it. You can see my origin point is in the wrong spot. This is a big problem. I didn't want it there. Fix that kind of stuff very early on because you can see we need it more down on this one, right? That's what we wanted. So let's re-export it. If you mess that up at the start, It's not the end of the world, but if you had laid out a whole level and it's not in the right spot, then you're going to have them all shift on you. You got to go fix them all, which you don't want to do. So definitely get them right from the start. That's what I'm saying. So otherwise you see it shifts. But once you understand, the placement, it's not really a big deal. And like we should probably scale it up appropriately to fit the other piece if we wanted it to, instead of scaling it here in the engine. Things like that. Like you can scale things obviously in the engine. It's not the end of the world. But you could do it to test it even maybe just to see what it would look like if it was larger. This particular piece. You can see they're starting to line up with each other somewhat. We got like some discrepancies between each other though. Whatever the case. And so that's okay. But it's not maybe not ideal always. The shadows here are looking a little bit rough. I'm wondering if that's just I had changed the graphics settings, I think, right? But I wonder if it got hung up, is what I'm thinking. Oh no, I thought I changed all these, but maybe I didn't. Might have set them back somehow or something. Who knows? Yeah, it should be looking a lot sharper. You can see there are some limitations with like FXAA as well. TA looks really nice, but it does have like ghosting and it's a little bit less performant. A lot of guys say they don't like it. I don't think it's TA that they don't like. I think it's that just the engines have becoming more heavy and more bloated that they don't like. I think that's the big thing. As you can see over here, it's not really a big issue. It's not, we're still cruising. And I know there's no textures and we're not pushing the graphics right now or the gameplay mechanics or anything, but in Unreal Engine, we'd still be pretty low right now on something like this. So let's just swap it over here. We'll switch it to TAA. Okay, and you'll see, like, it is more demanding usually, but even now, TAA is not really the issue. But it will ghost a little. That's the only thing I don't really care about. But overall, I mean, like, look what we got going in just one little short video, and about 50 minutes of our time, we're starting on an environment, guys. Now you're gonna have to spend a lot more time than this to finish something, right? Like just blocking it out very quick and getting ideas going is one thing. It took me time to model these, but I did the video on these, by the way, so that you can go, if you want to go watch it, you can. I mean, this kind of stuff. Did I do a video on these? I think I did. I may or may not. I did a video on how to do like the parts, but maybe not building this exact one. You can do some of this in Krita as like 2D graphics and then convert it into mesh, which is insane. So all you got to do is kind of like kit bash your own stuff together. Like none of this is Boolean together, nothing like that. You just got to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. And we get our chance to debug this too. Like we could just switch over to debug. We could do quad overdraw, right? Like how much of this is like non-performant or not very good performance anyways, right? Little bit of specks of red, probably not the end of the world. But if like your whole screen's turning red, that's probably a big deal. Or yellow anyways. The green here, that's a little bit brighter. This is just saying that it's drawing things. It's like sampling pixels over and over. It's drawing the things behind the model itself. So you can see this area here doesn't work out as well. There's more red in it. A little bit probably won't be the end of the world, but a lot is probably a bad idea. So you can see like this is from this angle, there's a lot more going on here. And you can get some pretty big yellow patches and stuff going in this area. So that's, if you ever wondered why, like in certain games when you're playing them, like you get into like a weird area that feels kind of glitchy and it starts freaking out a little bit. This is usually those kinds of areas, right? The quad overdraw is probably going crazy because from over here, it's not as bad. But when you're like right up in the mesh and you're getting all crazy on it, yeah, I think you get the idea, right? It's not like like there's a law to quad overdraw or any other thing working with a game engine. There's no rule necessarily on how you're going to use it. The main thing is to monitor it as you're building it and just make sure it's within acceptable limits of the performance you're trying to create. And honestly, You know, a lot of game companies, maybe they don't do it at all, but I have a feeling that they probably don't. But maybe some guys still do it. Build for your target platform. Like if you're going to build for PC and you want to do low spec PC, go pick up like a $400 laptop or whatever and test your builds on that to make sure it's working correctly. You wouldn't believe the amount of times that I've tested either Unreal Engine projects or something else where they have like the default settings, they have like ray tracing kicked on by default when it don't need it, right? And it just kills performance right off the bat. There's video games on like the marketplaces right now that literally are terribly optimized. They're indie projects or small studios, but they've left something like that on, right? And that's a terrible thing to do. Over here, we don't have to worry about it really, but you know, in other game engines, we might have ray tracing and have to worry about it, right? So just little things to keep in mind. Ultimately, the performance kind of starts with you. That's the main thing. As a level designer / environment artist, like and lighting artists and stuff, this is going to heavily dictate the performance of a game. Basically, is what I'm getting at here. All of this little intricate detail work can start to add up very quickly and kill frames per second. And then you start mixing in, you know, the actual gameplay mechanics and audio and everything else. That stuff can have an effect as well. So very easy to screw up a game if you don't pay attention to what you're doing as you work on it. You know, try to do what you can do fast so you save time and, you know, increase production speed. But, you know, if you can't, I want to bring this one down. I'm just going to try this for now. I don't think it's the right answer, but we'll do that. We're going to duplicate it and we're going to rotate it. Come on. There you go. Now we have those together. Okay. I'm going to control click them. We could probably group them. See, control G groups them. It creates an empty actor. And so we can say like, just call it a wall pillar for now or something. Push it back a little. Okay. So maybe we don't do every one like that. Maybe we can delete every other one. And then we can just throw in these every now and then. Or that's a little too much, maybe having little corners like that. Sometimes things like that, I don't care for them, right? You see, we got to select. I guess when you select these, you got to be careful because it selects the sub object. I've never been a big fan of that doing that. That's the same way machine tool groups work, but I don't really care for that behavior. Anyways, but yeah, having them repeat that many times probably not a good idea. Maybe we do a big section like this instead at some point, you know? Let's get rid of these walls for now. Well, yeah, I think you get the idea. You can start making more complex parts, pieces, models, whatever. Do a floor, do a ceiling, do windows, do, you know what I'm saying? Corner units, whatever you got to do, whatever you can do to make it work. And as long as the performance isn't dive bombing, you're good. That's the main thing. Like, could we use these as ceiling pieces? Maybe, but it probably wouldn't look that good. To be honest, it probably just looked terrible. And we could probably put these into more, maybe there's a different way of doing like a prefab setup over here. I'm pretty sure there is. It's probably based off of the empty. But it's probably like we grab this and throw it down here. Yeah, like Unity basically. And so now when we use that one, you see, this one might stay together is what I was thinking. Yeah, I see it does. And that's good. Like we can delete that one even. Don't even need it anymore. So we don't have to worry about this nonsense. And cool little game engine. I really like it. and you do your set dress or test pieces over here. You could still test in like Blender and whatnot. Sometimes you have to, but it's so much easier to control it over here with the either prefabs or grouping or using empties or whatever. Blender by default, like if you don't use add-ons with it, there's nothing wrong with it necessarily. You can make a lot of stuff in it very good, very fast even. But it's just that it kind of adds up, you know, like a little feature here is missing, a little features there is missing. So you end up using collections and collection instances. And honestly, while that's great and they have some use on an indie project, it's not as useful, right? Or small projects. It's not as useful because a lot of times you gotta be a little bit more flexible. Ooh, how did we do that? Now we got we're opening it back up again. So there's a shortcut maybe I'm pressing wrong. Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't know exactly what's happening there, but okay, we'll figure that out later. Now I'm just goofing off, and this video's gone on for almost an hour, guys. So, I mean, realistically, this kind of project, you're going to work on it for, I mean, really, it depends on how complex you make it, but it can take you months to work on a full environment. And especially by yourself, it could take years even, depending on how complex it is. If you're doing like big open world stuff like Grand Theft Auto, you're going to be working on it nonstop for years. Game development does not happen instantly, right? So small scenes like this can go relatively fast. Bigger than this, though, it starts to slow down dramatically. And even these you should sink some time into them. So ultimately, judgment call on your behalf on what you're going to end up doing. But it's not hard to get into. It's fun. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a problem necessarily, right? It takes time. All right. Anyway, so that is going to be our video for today. I think I've talked enough, and you can have fun doing this, guys. You can sketch something first, then go model the rough version of it, bring it into the game engine, test it out, use a character controller to run around it. It's fun. It's not meant to be like a nightmare scenario. The only thing you got to do now is you got to you take that rough model, work it into a good like mid or low poly or whatever you want, and then turn it into a high poly. You can do like low to high. You can do high to low. You want to rebuild it in high detail and then retopo it and turn it into a low. Do that. It's like you can do all of it. Like some projects might work better one way, and then some projects might work better the other way. You see what I'm getting at? So, but I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave a comment. It actually helps a lot when people comment because they end up pushing it more in the algorithm, I think, because of that. At least it seems like they do. So there we go. Create a corner unit here. We use these as runs. Create doorways or actual doors. Maybe this is like an entrance to a factory or something. We'd have to do an arc, whatever. Yep. And we just keep going with it. So I'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care.